If you're talking about it, we're talking about it. Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this live broadcast. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. We're still in hour number one. Thank you so much for joining us. Now we're going to pivot to a couple of things, of course, is European affairs. As you've seen, the election results right across Europe and also elsewhere, there's a lot of commotion, a lot of hand-waving about the so-called far right. I don't think it's that far to the right, but taking control, getting huge results in European elections, of course, in the United Kingdom as well and elsewhere. What does this mean? We'll get into that with our next guest, specifically with France. France is a really important EU country. Wherever France goes, Brussels is going to have to react to it. So a very important European country, as well as what's happening on the NATO front. Some interesting developments there. Let's bring on to the program our de facto European correspondent, independent researcher, journalist, Freddie Ponton, joining us right now from France. Hello, Freddie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, Patrick. Good to be on the show, as always.
It's great to have you as well, Freddie, and we're all trying to make sense of what's going on regarding the European elections. It seems, Freddie, anyway, from top to bottom, from Germany to France and elsewhere, we're seeing this, at least the media are talking about this surge in the, quote, far right or the right wing, making huge gains, specifically in France. Potentially throwing the Macron regime into turmoil, and maybe the agenda that came along with the wave of elite and banker support to install Emmanuel Macron into power some years ago looks like a potential change of tact here. But tell us where we are right now with the French elections. Why is this so important as well? There's a lot going on in France, and especially in relation to Brussels and the EU. Where France goes, Europe goes. Freddie, what do we need to know?
Well, at this stage, I think we're following the track of the European elections, where the national rally seems to have make an impressive score. So the first round was a bit of a confirmation, if you will, of these legislative elections after Macron's basically dissolved the National Assembly and called for the snap election. People in France wanted to know where we stand. So I think that was a great test, this first round, to establish the rule of engagement, if you will, from a political point of view. So at this moment in time, very interesting first round indeed, Patrick, with last Sunday, the national rally basically doubling down and showing clearly that they are ahead of everyone. It's quite clear that France has already pretty much its decisions that it will be supporting the national rally for these legislative elections with 33.15%, in terms of a score. And just behind that, you have not Macron, but you have the new Popular France, kind of a coalition of the left, if you will, from the center left all the way down to the far left with Mélenchon. And they scored pretty good as well in this first round with 27.9% of the votes in their favor. So we can clearly see that now, Ensemble with Renaissance and all these parties under Ensemble with Macron and the Prime Minister Gabriel Attal is in third position. So they are clearly weakening. So the game has changed now. This is no more about selling an agenda, a program. This is really about now blocking the national rally. And that is pretty much what we've seen over the past few days since the result came on Sunday night. We saw the Macron, the centrist, and then the leftists coming together and discussing various ideas on how to block the national rally. And it's very interesting what kind of possibility has been entertained, the various rumors, and then actually the fact and where we are today. So it's an interesting time because we're literally 4 days away from the second round where we will eventually find out who is the lead, whether the national rally will secure a kind of a first place, uncontested first place, which will allow them to govern, and basically unroll their program. So that's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen over the next few days, what's going to be the next moves. But we already have a glimpse into that, and it's very interesting.
So tell us, if you would, Freddie, what brought about this change, this shift in the electoral decision-making of the voters choosing the national rally? We'll bring this up on screen. We've seen a lot of this in the media recently, a talk about Macron being toxic. I could bring up about 10 articles from different mainstream media, and they all use the word Macron toxic. Toxic Macron. Macron is toxic. This is clearly kind of a talking point, as it were. I know it sort of probably comes from a statement made by another French official, but is it merely because Macron is, the public's become tired with him, or are we looking at a major reaction to issues like immigration, a poor economy, etc.? What's brought about the big change in the way people are voting, Freddie?
Well, first, because Macron's way of ruling is something that doesn't work with the French, and the French knows that very well. Someone that has been ruling using basically emergency power all along. So, if you will, that is not connected with the French people. He connects with supranational bodies like the European Union, the WHO, or NATO. That's the people he connects with, and with these oligarchic groups that seems to be backing up everything he does and financing everything he does. But the dialogue with the French people is not basically returned. It has not returned. And because of that, all the major crises, social crises, insecurity, all the topics that matters to the French people have not been addressed, and they've been basically set aside, if you will, and under the disguise of political discourse, a lot of kind of 2 hours talk where with no takeaway whatsoever for anybody. So when this kind of connection does not exist, it's very hard to rebuild it, especially if it was never there in the first place. And I think what we are saying at the moment is the expression of the French citizenry about a fed up and overall fed up sentiments that they have not been heard, that their suffering is not being heard, and it's getting worse and worse. We're getting into more debts, and our life is not getting any better. It's getting worse and worse. And I think the French has drawn the line right now, and they're saying we need changes. So there is a call for serious change, and they feel that the National Rally is the best party. The way it's been presented to the people and the way they've been talking to the French people for many years seems to have paid off. I think Marine Le Pen's strategy to step back a little bit and let a younger candidate like Jordan Bardella, 28 years old, extremely bright. Doesn't matter if we like his ideas or not. You don't get at this level in politics at this age unless you're extremely bright. And I think they were able to really connect with the French and also address the topics that matter to the French people. And we'll go through that in a moment. But I think they have a better connections. And I think also, if you look a bit further down in this reflection, I think you can see also the French starting to be fed up with the European Union. And sovereignty, nationalism, all these kind of topics are starting to get more and more tractions. The idea of moving away from the euro, moving away from NATO, moving away from the United Nations, WHO, all that kind of things is it becomes very fluent. People are more and more interested in understanding what will be the impact of France doing that, getting away from these supranational bodies and regain our sovereignty. So all that, I think, is what the French people wants to hear. And more importantly, we want to hear about the ability of our countries and our leaders to be able to govern on behalf of France and not following the directives of the European Union. Because whatever we have as a government, it doesn't matter. If we are still in the European Union, we're still going to be under the pressure, the dictate of the European Union. And that is just a sentiment at the moment the French are very uncomfortable with.
It's interesting when you look at the demographic breakdown of Emmanuel Macron with this really sort of flimsy percentile that he's still holding on to in his party. His biggest appeal is with the older voters, the over 70s. And this really kind of speaks to a shift in demographics in France, partly because of immigration, but not just that, that the sort of values are the sort of things that someone like a Macron represents, a total establishment candidate, how disconnected he is with the majority of the population, starting to reflect in the voting results. Now it's becoming obvious for people to see. And it doesn't seem like that the establishment, their candidate in Macron or whoever, Freddie, has much to offer anybody who's younger age brackets. They're just not speaking to them. What are these people missing? Clearly, the economy has to factor in hugely for younger people trying to make the cost of living each month. It's increasingly impossible on the current wage bracket. What are some of the biggest issues here that the National Rally is going to have to somehow tackle?
Well, it's mainly the purchasing power, the immigration, the security, some aspect with regards to the agriculture, the health issues. There's many aspects that matters to the standard French person, which wants to find a doctor in his city, where he cannot find it. He has to travel, hundreds of kilometers to find a doctor or a specialist, for his treatments. As far as security is concerned, there is a kind of laxity for delinquents, and troublemakers and criminals. It seems that they never go to jail. They never get punished. They just get a slap on the wrist, and next thing we know, they're out, And then there's the big kind of a block of discussions around immigrations, and that's what the National Rally is doing, is going after reducing legal and illegal immigrations and expelling foreign troublemakers, those that simply shouldn't be in France. They were granted basically asylum, or they were granted, the possibility of staying in France, but they're just not acting in respect with our traditions and so on. So these people are kind of, the target for the National Rally because they are troublemakers and they interact with the French in manners that are displeasing often. And that's something that a lot of French people have complained about it. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the purchasing power. Bardella was very clear from day one. He said, if I'm elected, the first thing I will do is to lower the tax, the VAT from 20% to 5.5% on all energy and fuel and motor fuel, oil and so on. So, for those that use their car on a regular basis, that's going to make a huge difference as well. And then you saw over the past 6 months, even a year, we saw the agricultures, the farmers, the complaints, the unfair competition with the French farmers. So that's also something where the French can resonate, and that's part of the agenda for the National Rally, which coming with a proposal to develop short supply chains and, of course, combat unfair competition. So it's well put together program. Now whether they're going to be able to act upon it's a complete different subject. But in itself, I would say that they were very good at pinpointing what the French wants and what they want to be addressed now, the issue that needs to be addressed right now. And a lot of it has to do with security, immigration, purchasing power, and health and agriculture.
And what about the issue of Ukraine? I mean, where is this? What is the National Rally? If they have, let's say, a working majority in the French Assembly, what could you expect to see in terms of any shift on policy vis-a-vis Ukraine? How proactive France would be in NATO? Macron was very proactive when the Ukrainian conflict broke out, maybe less so now, but talk of conscription a couple of weeks ago, that conversation was coming up. Not very popular, of course. That's not going to win any votes. Where's the National Rally, Le Pen, Bardella, on this issue of Ukraine?
Well, it's a bit bizarre because Marine Le Pen was very clear. She's always been pro-Russian in many ways, and she's never saw Russia as an enemy at all. Actually, to the contrary. But Bardella is slightly a little bit different. Has a different approach, I think, in terms of presenting more an agenda that would be about looking for peace, rather than to exacerbate, if you will, this conflict. Trying to find a solution towards an end, but without being pro-Russian, not being pro-Ukrainian, just perhaps looking for something that is more stabilizing, in the backyard of Europe. So I think he's not really. He understands that for the French, this debate is not a priority. It's really about pure domestic issues we're talking about. This has to do with foreign policies. This is about NATO. This is about the United States, UK. France is more a bit of a spectator, if you will, in one sense, and they've been watching Macron's doing stupid things, and no one is agreeing about basically sending troops to Ukraine. That's something that simply doesn't fly in France whatsoever. No one has expressed the sentiment. There's no support in the press. It's not something that, populist movements even entertain for 1 second. This is really not on the shelf at the moment. It's not irrelevant, but it's not what's going to trigger the balance in between having the national rally as a government or, keeping the old machine with Macron and perhaps even the left is kind of growing up a little bit and getting a little bit more traction in the National Assembly. So again, the foreign policy, I don't think they impact very much the legislators. They have more impact on the presidential elections. But on the legislative, this is really about domestic issues, Patrick.
So what about, we've got a couple minutes left and before we go to break, Freddie, but we have heard noises from the left in France, Mélenchon talking about perhaps an alliance with Macron. And of course, the old trope, we need to stop the far right. We need to come together to stop the far right. Is there going to be any traction on this? What have you heard on that front?
Sure. Well, there's two aspects you need to consider. First, there was a rumor about Macron and LFI, La France Insoumise with Mélenchon, radical left, coming together, as forming a coalition in order to counteract the national rally. Well, that's just rumors. And very quickly on Monday morning, Mélenchon came to the press, Macron came to the press, and very clearly stated that there was no such a thing to be entertained. There was never going to be a coalition with the radical left or with Mélenchon, LFI. It's not in a million years. Now, the possibility of a coalition being formed with the rest, there are other many parties in between center-left and far-left that could come into this equation that perhaps the Macron and Ensemble could consider as potential partner within a coalition, but it will exclude a Mélenchon. The problem is the numbers don't simply add up. Even if you were to do that without Mélenchon, which has the biggest poll and that attract the most voters, if you exclude them, you will not be able to get a majority. And if you cannot get a majority, what's the point of doing that? So that has to be disregarded. Now, what they've done from a strategic point of view, the centrist and the left and the far left have come together with a strategy which is basically the withdrawal instructions. So let me explain. Basically, by the weekend and the close on Tuesday, the left has withdrawn more than 130 candidates from their list, across France, and the presidential camp, Macron, more than 80 from their list, especially in constituencies where the national rally has kind of pretty much a serious chance to win, if you will. Now, the idea behind that is to offer less choice so that the voters have basically instructions not to vote for their preferred candidate, but to vote for someone that's going to be basically directly competing with Marine Le Pen and the national rally. So they took out a lot of candidates and reinforced basically a major candidate position in powerful cities where they need to win if they want to basically counteract the national rally. So it's a strategy that could work in principles, but on the other hand, you're going to have French electors that have been voting, in this particular camp for all their life. And you're telling them, well, you have to disregard that. And you might have to vote for someone you don't like. But it's not about what you like. It's about stopping the national rally. So it's a very bizarre election because this is not anymore about politics. Politics is about, the view, the program, what you stand for, the values, and you support a candidate because you can relate. Well, it's out of the window now. It's about voting to block the national rally. So it's a different form of politics. This is purely voting strategy, messing around with the ballots and making sure that your voters are going to vote where you tell them to vote. That is the only point of contact between the centrist and the left. That's where they basically agreed upon that is the best way to destroy, at least to ruin the possibility of the national rally to have a complete majority and then therefore to be able to govern. I think that's the main strategy at this moment in time, Patrick.
Wow. So taking on the tactical voting, as it's sometimes called. And again, this is really a tragedy of politics, because then it's not about, as you say, Freddie, it's not about the issues. It's not about, solving the problems that the countries need. It's about stopping one party or stopping the national rally. And in America, the Democrats would employ similar tactics to stop Donald Trump, for instance. So you get a sort of degradation of the political conversation into, it's like the old Groucho Marx song, whatever it is, I'm against it, basically he doesn't care. I'm against it. It's from the national rally. You're against it, etc. So polarization of politics, not necessarily good for the electorate or the country when you get to that stage. It means that the key issues are not going to be addressed in the way they should.
Yeah, it's also on the small scale, if you will. This is about the balance of power. Either power will be in the hands of the far right on Sunday night, or whether the power will be back into the parliament, if you will. And that's really that balance of power they're mitigating at the moment. That is what's happening. It's not about what you believe in. It's about the power. Where does the power lies within this government? And this in France, and this is a very important decision, because the ramification of this vote on Sunday will decide the stability of the European Union or the instability in the European Union. So, as I say, anything that happened in France, because it is an important actor in the European Union, same as Germany, if France can be stabilized in a certain way, it works for the European Union and for Ursula von der Leyen, which is going to be re-elected, of course. So having a destabilizing factor, which is getting support at the European Union, at a European election, and now that has literally the possibility of govern France, this will definitely destabilize the plan of those behind, the power at stake in these supranational organizations.
No, absolutely it will. And as the old saying goes, when France gets a cold, Europe sneezes, basically, or the other way around, I think. But France very pivotal in the destiny of Europe and Brussels, of course. So we'll be looking closely at that. Listen, we're going to take a break now. When we come back, I want to talk to you, Freddie, about the issue of Ukraine, NATO. There's been some interesting developments there. I know you've been paying close attention to this. I want to get your thoughts and insights on that. We're going to take a break right now with TNT, Today's News Talk. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. We'll be back in just a few moments. Stay with us.